Okay. What do you think of when you hear the word marriage? What comes to mind? Perhaps you picture your parents' marriage and all their happy memories together. Or maybe you picture your own wedding one day, perfectly planned, and the adventure that's going to follow. But can you believe that for 1 in 9 men and for 1 in 4 women, that adventure includes domestic sexual abuse? This breaks down to about 20 people every minute of every day being attacked by their partners. It wasn't until the 1960s when this idea of how to treat women started to change. In fact, society often told these women that the way they were treated in particular, because historically speaking, women were targeted more than men when it comes to domestic violence, that this was expected, and sometimes people wanted this to happen. They felt that this is how a marriage should work. In fact, one of the biggest forms of domestic violence in the 20th century was marital rape. It wasn't until the 1960s, when second-wave feminism started, that anyone actually started considering raped wives to be rape victims at all. Again, it was seen as your wifely duty, and your body was owed to your husband. Second-wave feminism focused on sexuality and reproductive rights, and it was the first time that women really spoke up about the torment that they endured at their homes. These are some of the pictures of different rallies, and there were hundreds of them all across the country, spanning from the late 60s through the 70s. Sorry. Second-wave feminism started in the late 1960s, and it covered the same amount of time that the civil rights movement did. It was a very turbulent time, and often second-wave feminism is lost to the bigger issues of the era, such as racism. However, feminists were always there, and they were always fighting. Take February of 1970, for instance. For the entire month, feminists stood in front of the U.S. Senate gallery and demanded equal treatments, equal rights, and they proposed a new amendment based on these things. For the next 13 years, Congress would go back and forth on whether or not to accept this amendment, and it failed by 3 states. Today, it's still being battled, and it's actually come up again starting in 2010, but we still have not ratified this new amendment. On August 26th of that same year was the first women's strike for equality, and it was a day when women walked out on the responsibilities all across the country to bring attention to how they were being treated in their home and in the workplace. In 1973, the historic Roe v. Wade decision was made, and feminists all across the country endorsed this decision and celebrated it, because with the legalization of first trimester abortions, women were given some of their bodily autonomy back. By September of 1974, the feminist movement was at its strongest. The president of the National Organization for Women met with the United States President Gerald Ford to discuss in the White House how women were being treated and how he could be pro-woman in a time of turbulent change for the entire country. So, why exactly does this matter? Women are treated fairly well now, aren't we? Well, the thing is, that this whole change is still very new to the U.S. It wasn't until 1979 that marital rape was criminalized at all. Massachusetts was the first state where a case was taken to court and the husband was actually charged with rape. Think about that. 1979. That's less than 40 years ago. And yet, if I were to ask you how many of you thought marital rape was wrong, I'd expect all of your hands to be up, probably in disgust. By 1993, all 50 states had some form of marital rape illegal. Think about how long it took for people to say that raping women in any matter, in any case, was wrong. Unfortunately, it is still technically legal in 8 states under certain circumstances. And as I speak to you today, these laws are actually trying to be changed by the current feminist movement. But so far, nothing has actually changed in these 8 states. So, what I want to leave you with today, I want you to think about how the feminist movement of the 60s and 70s caused changes in how marital rape was treated and viewed. And I want you to think about the feminist movement that's going on right now. We're living in another historically critical wave of feminism, and to many people, feminism is a joke. But to the people of the 60s and 70s, it was a movement with meaning, and it incited real change. Think to yourselves, how are women being treated right now? What are women saying to me that I shrug off, I laugh off? And I want you to think, if people had listened in the 60s, the 70s, the millennia before, what difference would it have made to the women being attacked in their own home? Thank you.